Genesis 30. When Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister. She said to Jacob, "Give me children, or I shall die." Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, "Am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" Then she said, "Here is my servant Bilhah. Go into her, so that she may give birth on my behalf, that even I may have children through her." So she gave him her servant Bilhah as a wife, and Jacob went into her. And Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, "God has judged me, and has also heard my voice and given me a son." Therefore she called his name Dan. Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again, and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, "With mighty wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed." So she called his name Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had ceased bearing children, she took her servant Zilpah, and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Then Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son, and Leah said, "Good fortune has come." So she called his name Gad. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son, and Leah said, "Happy am I, for women have called me happy." So she called his name Asher. In the days of wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field, and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But she said to her, "Is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also?" Rachel said, "Then he may lie with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes." When Jacob came from the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come in to me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes." So he lay with her that night. And God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. Leah said, "God has given me my wages because I gave my servant to my husband." So she called his name Issachar. And Leah conceived again, and she bore Jacob a sixth son. Then Leah said, "God has endowed me with a good endowment. Now my husband will honor me because I have borne him 6 sons. So she called his name Zebulun. Afterward she bore a daughter, and called her name Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. She conceived and bore a son, and said, "God has taken away my reproach." And she called his name Joseph, saying, "May the Lord add to me another son." As soon as Rachel had borne Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away, that I may go to my own home and country. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you, that I may go, for you know the service that I have given you." But Laban said to him, "If I have found favor in your sight, I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. Name your wages, and I will give it." Jacob said to him, "You yourself know how I have served you, how your livestock has fared with me. For you had little before I came, and it has increased abundantly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I turned. But now when shall I provide for my own household also?" He said, "What shall I give you?" Jacob said, "You shall not give me anything. If you will do this for me, I will again pasture your flock and keep it. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep and every black lamb, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and they shall be my wages. So my honesty will answer for me later, when you come to look into my wages with you. Everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and black among the lambs, if found with me, shall be counted stolen." Laban said, "Good, let it be as you have said." But that day Laban removed the male goats that were striped and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had white on it, and every lamb that was black, and put them in the charge of his sons. And he set a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob pastured the rest of Laban's flock. Then Jacob took fresh sticks of poplar and almond and plane trees, and peeled white streaks in them, exposing the white of the sticks. He set the sticks that he had peeled in front of the flocks in the troughs, that is, in the watering places, where the flocks came to drink. And since they bred when they came to drink, the flocks bred in front of the sticks, and so the flocks brought forth striped, speckled, and spotted. And Jacob separated the lambs and set the faces of the flocks toward the striped and all the black in the flock of Laban. He put his own droves apart, and did not put them with Laban's flock. Whenever the stronger of the flock were breeding, Jacob would lay the sticks in the troughs before the eyes of the flock, that they might breed among the sticks. But for the feebler of the flock he would not lay them there. So the feebler would be Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. Thus the man increased greatly and had large flocks, female servants and male servants, and camels and donkeys. The word of the Lord. So, oh man, this chapter is so good. We've got some real classic Semitic family drama going on here. And it's universal too, right? So you have the women having all of their family drama with the kids and rivalries with each other. And then meanwhile the men are trying to, get ahead of one another in the work and tricking one another there. It's just then particularized to this extremely, nomadic pastoralist context. And, oh man, there's so much. So, we see that surrogacy is not a new phenomenon. Okay? So, surrogacy, this idea of, I'll have this poor woman who we pay to bear a child on our behalf, goes all the way back, and it's not a good situation, okay? So, it wasn't good then, it's not good now, but people do it, and it's one of those things where they're so desperate to have children that they're willing to stoop that low, and doesn't really improve anybody's situation, but it does lead to more heirs and more tribes, more fulfillment of the promise of God. So something to think about as an incel, or as a sigma male, or as a sensitive young man, or whatever stripe of disenfranchised, however you're sexually disenfranchised, whatever the case may be with that. Something to keep in mind is that even when things go crazy, God can still bless you, and He can still fulfill His promises, and He can, I'm assuming here, right, that the young man in this hypothetical audience, I don't know what your situation is, but my hypothetical audience member is a young man who doesn't just want to have sex, he wants to start a family. And so we're reading through Genesis, and we're looking at this incredibly powerful and incredibly dysfunctional family, thinking, okay, what sort of lesson am I supposed to take away from this? And so I think one of the lessons that we can take away here is that they're willing to do anything to have more children, and to get the honor of being a mother in this case. And that's not even it's not good that they're in rivalry with each other. It's not good that it's polygamous. It's, all of this dysfunction, but the actual end goal is life bearing. And that itself is better than our dysfunctional society that might have all of this pride about, like, oh, we wouldn't be involved in such a dysfunctional polygamous relationship. We wouldn't be doing this weird concubinage or surrogacy or something like that. So many things to morally turn your nose up to, but they were having children, and God was still blessing that as far as that went. The childbearing of these women begging God that He would open their womb, and he does. And so there's something to that, of just the sheer relentlessness of coming before God and just begging for something really bad. Like, you don't want to beg from human beings, but before the God of the universe, I think it is worthwhile to beg for whatever is really worth it. And so, not that I've never, done, I think, I've never done anything as wild as what they're doing here, and I don't think my prayer life really reflects a wild desire to have children or start a dynasty in the way that, like, they're locked onto that. But maybe that's something I need to change. Maybe I can learn something from this ancient Abrahamic dynasty, where this is part of the promises of God isn't just like waiting for God to do good things. It's also this like neediness in demanding that God actually make it happen. Saying, this is in line with what God has promised, and God works with that. So something for you to think about in the midst of your situation, whether you're a very picky and selective person, whether you're kind of hopeless, whether you're whatever stage of American sexual dysfunction that you're in. You know, every young person I talk to has just a whole host of neuroses about this, and they come from different areas and they revolve around different things. Some of these people are messed up. Some of these people are really amazing and attractive, but the the uniting theme is that they're extremely neurotic about a lot of different things that are holding them back. And to contrast with the people who are reproductively successful, who just sort of like get over that stuff and make it happen, or are just more functional, attractive people, and so it goes easier. All sorts of internal things that can go along with that, but they are, there's a lot of people who just, I think, they don't have the chutzpah to do what the kind of people in Genesis are doing, either financially or reproductively. I mean, and they got like mandrakes, so like mandrakes are kind of like reproductive aphrodisiac kind of facilitator. I don't know how that works. Maybe you make a potion out of it or something. So a lot of magic in this chapter. You got the mandrakes, you got divination that Laban is doing, and then you have Jacob's weird kind of breeding. Do not understand the logic behind that, whether that's some kind of like genetic breeding thing that he's doing, or some kind of Lamarckian like, oh, they're breeding in this condition, and so then that I don't know how that's supposed to work, or haven't read into that. I'm sure a lot of interesting papers have been written on that. So worth looking that up on Wikipedia. But the uniting theme here is we have people who are just sort of shameless in doing what they want to get what they want, and God still blesses it. Is it dysfunctional? Yes. Is all of it good? No. But God still pulls through with the blessing. And so, as Christians, we're held to the highest standard of righteousness. We need to be perfect the way that God is perfect. But we don't need to follow society's idea of what perfect moral conduct is, because obviously that's very corruptible and just deceptive. So there's this middle ground, I think, and this maybe is what Jesus is getting at when he says to be as shrewd as serpents, as innocent as doves. People in Genesis aren't always being as innocent as doves, but they are being very shrewd, and they are working in line with God's plan in the bigger cosmic sense. So you'd be thinking for yourself, I do want to be innocent. I don't want to get wrapped up in just some kind of awful, polygamous situation ship. A polygamous situation ship is not good. But there's got to be ways that we are currently blinded to by our cultural conditioning, where we can be shrewd and exploit the system and become more financially successful, more reproductively successful, while still being innocent and still being loving. I think all of that is attainable in Christ, and I think that's maybe an ideal. I don't know if I'm really capable of that kind of cunning that we see here from Jacob. He is, one of the more cunning characters in Scripture. So maybe it'd be hard for many of us to live up to that. But I think at the very least, we can praise some of that when we see it. Someone who is cunning, and uses that cunning to work within the bounds of God's plan, I think is to be commended, even in a way that's maybe a little edgy for our cultural assumptions. So that's where I currently land on that. Would be interested to hear pushback or elaboration if anyone wants to carry that further. Yeah, they really want the honor of children. That's something we just lack so much. Is that just that desperate urge? We've had that kind of many people have had that programmed out of them. Obviously, for a lot of people, that kicks in. Despite all the cultural programming, and they still desperately want children. So I don't know. Maybe there's some childless couples out there, or single gals who could really be empathizing with Rachel and Leah in a way that I don't understand as naturally. But yeah, I think just bigger picture. I think that's the way that we should be framing a lot of incel discourse, and not just incel discourse. Once again, just broader American reproductive dysfunction at every step of the process. Is people need to be reframing it in terms of, like, instead of being around like preferred lifestyle or life goals, maybe it needs to be more reframed around what is the plan of God and His promises. How do I reach out and seize every opportunity for that with as much cunning as possible? And did I have another part to that? No, I think, yeah, that's maybe how we should reframe it. But yeah, really funny how Jacob and Laban are tricking each other, and Rachel and just going at it and trying to get each other's mandrakes. Oh my gosh. Alright. That's all I got. Leave some thoughts below. I don't usually ask that, but I should want, which is, leave your thoughts. How do you think we can not just try to solve our own reproductive dysfunctions, but try to in a more social sense, help the whole church avoid the cultural catastrophe and be fertile and pursue God's promises that way. Yeah, fertility is a good thing, and it's part of God's plan. Maybe it's in a different way, because it's not building up towards the birth of Christ in the way that it was for Jacob and Rachel and Leah, but now it's sort of the other way around, where people should have children in the light of Christ rather than sort of as part of the breeding program to birth Christ. Kind of a weird way to think about it, but it's kind of what the Old Testament is all about. Yeah. Probably people just overthink stuff. And by people, I mean me. Because I like to, and I want to. Overthinking it's what I do. It's so sunny out today. I went up on top of the tower, sat in the sun. So good. There's so much happening. A lot of clouds in the sunshine, which is so good.